Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamti Nashtaprayeshu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 8, the author receives the orders of Krishna and Guru. Text 16 onwards. So previously Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was saying about those who want to understand Lord through the logic and arguments, they just cannot understand him. We have to, if we want to apply our logic and arguments, apply towards the mercy of the Lord, then there is something will happen. Text 16. Bahu janma kare yadi shravana kirtan tabu tana paye Krishna pade premadha. If one is infested with the 10 offenses in the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, despite his endeavor to chant the holy name for many births, he will not get the love of Godhead. That is the ultimate goal of this chanting. Bahu janma kare yadi shravan tabu tana paye Krishna pade premadha. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says in this connection that although one may go on chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for many, many years, because in the shloka it says many lifetimes, many births, one may, there is no possibility of attaining the platform of devotion service unless one accepts Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One must follow strictly the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu given in the Shikshashtaka. Trinadapi shanichena tarorapi saheshrana manina manadena kirtanya sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So that is the only way. But that can only, and when one is humble, one will not commit the offenses. So one who follows this direction, being freed from the 10 kinds of offenses, becomes successful in Krishna consciousness and ultimately reaches the platform of loving service to the personality of Godhead. So that is the platform we need to achieve. One must come to the understanding that the holy name of the Lord and the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself are identical. One cannot reach this conclusion unless one is offenseless in chanting the holy name. By our material calculation, we see a difference between the name and the substance. But in the spiritual world, the absolute is always absolute. The name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the absolute are all as good as the absolute himself. Thus, one is understood to be an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he considers himself an eternal servant of the holy name, and in this spirit distributes the holy name to the world. Considers himself an eternal servant of the holy name. Isn't that amazing? I mean, how can we say I'm a servant of the holy name? Theoretically, we know the holy name is non-different from Krishna. And then becoming a servant of the holy name means when we approach chanting, we should approach in a very respectful mode. And by chanting in a respectful mode, we are approaching Radha Krishna and pleading them, begging them, and begging the holy name also to please engage me in the service of Radha and Krishna. So we are just servants of holy name, servants of Radha Krishna. So the mood of our approach should be proper. One who chants in that spirit without offenses is certainly elevated to the platform of understanding that the holy name and the personality of Godhead are identical. To associate with the holy name and chant the holy name is to associate with the personality of Godhead directly. In the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, it is clearly said, Sevan mukhe hi jivvado, swayam eva sfurati yada. Sevan mukhe hi jivvado means when one starts, the shloka says, no one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Shri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. When one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord, or the transcendental name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord are revealed to him. But what it says, the shloka says, Sevan mukhehi jiva do, means it's the seva starts from jiva, tongue, jiva, and then adu. Adu can mean start, the adi, the first one is tongue, or adi also mean jiva and other senses. But it starts at jiva, chanting. So when we chant properly, then we can have rest of the realizations. The holy name becomes manifest when one engages in the service of the holy name. This service in a submissive attitude begins with one's tongue. Sevan mukhehi jivado. One must engage his tongue in the service of the holy name. One must engage his tongue in the service of the holy name. Our Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. We try to engage all the members of the Hare Krishna consciousness movement in the service of the holy name. Since the holy name and Krishna are non-different, the members of the Krishna consciousness movement not only chant the holy name of the Lord offenselessly, but also do not allow their tongues to eat anything that is not first offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this we studied in Nectar of Instruction. Vacha vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jivva vegam, udarapastha vegam. So, not to allow their tongues to eat anything that is not first offered to the Lord. The Supreme Lord declares, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome prayachati. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, a water, I'll accept it. Therefore, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has many temples all over the world, and in each and every temple, the Lord is offered these foods. On the basis of his demands, the devotees chant the holy name of the Lord offenselessly and never eat anything that is not first offered to the Lord. Many times, those who just want to argue can help them, but they just want to, okay, where he has said you should chant on your beats like this and that. Well, it is said about chanting, it is mentioned even in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Yagyanam japi yagyasmi. And among all the yagyas, I'm the chanting of the holy names. So it's mentioned. Those who don't want to understand or follow, what can I do? The functions of the tongue in the devotional service are to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and eat prasadam. That is first offered to the Lord. So that's good enough for one to make progress. And many times people argue, okay, Krishna just said, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. Why do you make so much of food items? See, that's the thing. We have to understand what Krishna is saying through acharyas. We cannot start applying our mind and thinking we have understood everything. So when acharyas explain, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. This is the minimum Krishna is asking. Minimum, at least do this thing. That's all. But he also says in Bhagavad Gita, Yad karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad juhoshi dadani. Whatever you eat, whatever you austerities you perform, whatever you give away, do it as an offering to me. So that is why understanding what Krishna says through acharyas, then we are on the right path. Then we are understanding from it. In fact, there is a bhajan for in Gaudiya Vaishnava, there is a bhajan that is sung when Radha in every temple, in ISKCON temples, when Radha and Krishna are offered Rajbhog. Bhaj Bhakta Vatsala Gaura Hari. Beautiful bhajan, but in that bhajan, it is mentioned whatever we are offering, what all we are offering. Mention of so many items. And it is sung when the Radha and Krishna are offered Rajbhog or Gornikai. And but this bhajan and all the items that are mentioned there, when you start singing, you start feeling hungry. All this wonderful, all the items are all Bengali items, but it's amazing bhajan. Jnanata su labha muktir bhaktir yagyadi punyata seyam sadhana sahasrayar hari bhakti sudurlabha. By cultivating philosophical knowledge, one can understand his spiritual position and thus be liberated. And by performing sacrifices and pious activities, one can achieve sense gratification in a higher planetary system. But the devotional service of the Lord is so rare that even by executing hundreds and thousands of such sacrifices, one cannot obtain it. So Sudurlabha, this bhakti is Sudurlabha. Prahlad Maharaj instructs, Matirna Krishna Prata Sato va mitho vipatet virivartana. These shlokas are to be discussed. The purport is that one cannot obtain Krishna Bhakti or devotional service of the Lord by official execution of the Vedic rituals. One has to approach a pure devotee. Narottam Das Thakur sings, Chhadiya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Paiche Keva. Who has been elevated without rendering service to a pure devotee. It's a statement of Prahlad Maharaj that unless one is able to accept the dust from the lotus feet of a pure Vaishnava, there is no possibility of achieving the platform of devotional service. That is the secret. The above mentioned Tantra Vachan, quoted from the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, is our perfect guidance in this connection. So, unless one is able to accept the dust from the lotus feet of a pure Vaishnava, of course, obtaining the dust from the lotus feet of pure Vaishnava, literally also it means that, but figuratively or really what it means is following the instructions of a pure devotee. Krishna yadi chute bhakte bhukti mukti diya. Kabu prema bhakti na dena rakhen lukaiya. If a devotee wants liberation or material sense gratification from the Lord, Krishna immediately delivers it. But pure devotional service, he keeps hidden. Even material sense gratification doesn't really deliver it that soon, because he wants to make us surrendered. Rajanapatir Gurur Alama Bhavatam Yadunam Devam Priya Kulapati Kvacha Kinkarova Astva Evam Anga Bhagavan Bhajatam Mukundo Muktin Dadati Karhichit Smana Bhakti Yogam. The great sage Shukdev said, my dear Parikshit, Maharaj Parikshit, the Supreme Personality of God, that Krishna is always ready to help you. He is your master, guru, God, and very dear friend, and also the head of your family. Yet sometimes he agrees to act as a family servant or order carrier. You're greatly fortunate because this relationship is possible only by Bhakti Yoga. The Lord can give liberation, mukti, very easily, but He does not give easily everyone Bhakti Yoga because by that process He is bound to the devotee. So he gets bound or he gets controlled by the devotee. This passage is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam while Shukdev Goswami was describing the character of Rishabdev. He distinguished between Bhakti Yoga and liberation by reciting this verse. In relationship with the Yadus and Pandavas, the Lord acted sometimes as a master, sometimes as an advisor, sometimes as a friend, sometimes as the head of the family, and sometimes even as a servant. Krishna once had to carry out an order of Yudhishthira. By carrying a letter Yudhishthira had written to Duryodhana regarding peace negotiations. Krishna as a Shanti Dut when he went. Similarly, he also became the chariot driver of Arjuna. This illustrates that in Bhakti Yoga, there is a relationship established between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the devotee. Such a relationship is established in the transcendental mellows known as Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. So different mellows. Because a relationship can only happen between two persons. So Supreme Person and living entity. If a devotee wants simple liberation, he gets it very easily from the Supreme Personality of God. It is confirmed by Bilmangal Thakur, Mukti Swayam Mukulitanjali Sevate Asma. For a devotee, mukti is not very important because mukti is always standing on his doorstep, waiting to serve him in some way. A devotee, therefore, must be attracted by the behavior of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, who live in a relationship with Krishna. The land, water, cows, trees, and flowers serve Krishna in Shantaras. His servants serve him in Dasiras, and his cowherd friends serve him in Sakhyaras. Similarly, the elder gopis and gopas serve Krishna as father and mother, uncle and other relatives, and the young gopis, the cowherd girls, serve Krishna in conjugal love. But they all serve him. While executing devotional service, one must be naturally inclined to serve Krishna in one of these transcendental relationships. That is the actual success of life. For a devotee to get liberation is not very difficult. Even one who is unable to establish a relationship with Krishna can achieve liberation by merging into the Brahman effulgence. This is called Sayujya Mukti. So for a devotee, liberation is not very difficult, but he doesn't want liberation. Vaishnavas never accept Sayujya Mukti, although sometimes they accept the other forms of liberation, namely Sarupya, Salokya, Samipya, and Sarshti. So Sarupya means in Vaikuntha one gets the same roop, same form as the Lord. Salokya means to live on the same planet, Samipya to live near the Lord, Sarshi to have the same opulence as him. But even in that shloka in Bhagavatam, where it is mentioned all this liberation, all these muktis, devotee says, I don't want them if there is no service involved. If there is service, yes, I'll accept any mukti. Except Sayujya. Sayujya means merging in Brahm Jyoti. That he doesn't want. A pure devotee, however, does not accept any kind of mukti. He wants only to serve Krishna in a transcendental relationship. This is the perfectional stage of spiritual life. Mayavadi philosophers desire to merge into the existence of the Brahman effulgence, although this aspect of liberation is always neglected by devotees. Srila Prabodhanand Saraswati Thakur describing this kind of mukti, which is called Kaivalya, or becoming one with the Supreme, has said, Kaivalyam narakayate. Becoming one with the Supreme is as good as going to hell. This is Prabodhanand Saraswati Thakur has compared. the merging in Brahm Jyoti is as good as going to hell. Therefore, the ideal of Mayavad philosophy, becoming one with the Supreme, is hellish for a devotee. He never accepts it. Mayavadi philosophers do not know that even if they merge into the effulgence of the Supreme, this will not give them ultimate rest. An individual soul cannot live in the Brahman effulgence in a state of inactivity. After some time, he must desire to be active, because soul is always active. Even in this conditioned state, the soul is always active, want to do something. So why not in the liberated state he would be active? However, since he is not aware of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore has no spiritual activity, he must come down for further activities in this material world. Because from Brahm Jyoti, he cannot go above. He is not qualified yet to go above. So he has to come down to the material world again. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, because Mayavadi philosophers have no information regarding the transcendental service of the Lord, even after attaining liberation from material activities and merging into the Brahman effulgence. They must come down again to this material world to open hospitals or schools or perform similar philanthropic activities, because they have no idea about devotion service. So, Hena Prema Shri Chaitanya Dila Yatha Tatha Jagai Magai Pariyanta Niraka Katha. Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has freely given this love of Krishna everywhere and anywhere, even to the most fallen, such as Jagai and Madai. What then to speak of those who are already pious and elevated? So this is how merciful Mahaprabhu is. The distinction between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's gift to human society and the gifts of others is that whereas so-called philanthropic and humanitarian workers give some relief to human society as far as the body is concerned, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offers the best facilities for going back home, back to Godhead, with love of Godhead. That nobody has given, or not, some. Of course, Krishna has given, Ram has given this, but Krishna spoke some about it, about bhakti in Bhagavad Gita. But what Mahaprabhu gave, that nobody gave, love of Krishna. That is the highest stage, but he gave it freely. Not just Mahaprabhu, Panchtattva, all of them gave. If one seriously makes a comparative study of the two gifts, certainly he is at all sober if he will give the greatest gift to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was with this purpose that Kaviraj Goswami said, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Daya Kara Vichara, Vichara Karile Chitte Pave Chamatkar. If you are indeed interested in logic and argument, kindly accept it to be the mercy. Kindly apply it to the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If you do so, you will find it to be strikingly wonderful. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Dina hina yatta chilla hari nama dharila, tara sakshi jagai madhai. The two brothers, Jagai and Madhai, epitomize the sinful population of this age of Kali. They were most disturbing elements in society because they were meat eaters, drunkards, women hunters, rogues, and thieves. Yet, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered them, to say nothing of others who were sober and pious, devoted, and conscious. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that, to say nothing of the Brahminically qualified devotees and Rajarishis, Kim Punar Brahma Punya Bhakta Rajarshaya Tatha. Anyone who, by the association of pure devotee, comes to Krishna consciousness, becomes eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. So this is what happens to them. But Mahaprabhu, his mercy is most amazing. So Krishna, Lord declares, O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, although they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered the two fallen brothers, Jagai and Madhai, but the entire world is presently full of Jagais and Madhai. So in other words, women hunters, meat eaters, gamblers, thieves and other rogues who create all kinds of disturbances in society. The activities of such persons have now become common practices. It's no longer considered abominable to be a drunkard, women hunter, meat eater, thief or rogue. For these elements have been assimilated by human society, because the human society is made of these kind of elements anyway. So it's all okay now. That does not mean, however, that the abominable qualities of such persons will help free human society from the clutches of Maya. Rather, they will entangle humanity more and more in the reactions of stringent laws of material nature. One's activities are all performed under the influence of the modes of material nature, because people are now associating with the modes of ignorance and to some extent passion with no traces of goodness. They're becoming increasingly greedy and lusty, for that is the effect of associating with these modes. So long purport, I'll just go towards the end. Since everything is property of God and all living entities, not only human beings, but even animals, birds, plants, and so on, are all children of God. Everyone has a right to live at the cost of God with God consciousness. This is the sum and substance of the Krishna consciousness mode. And this is what we have to give it to everybody, and it's only possible by Harinam and preaching and doing the Sankirtan Yagya basically. Okay, I guess I'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments.
Beautiful purport, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
What was of the song where we performed the bhoga for the Lord?
I'll post it.
Thank you.
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी।
हरे कृष्णा।
प्रभु जी वो आरतीज भी पोस्ट कर दीजिएगा।
वो मंगला आरती?
हाँ, वो जो 3-4 आरतीज है ना, which we discuss.
अरे ओके मैं क्यों नहीं मैं भूल गया
कोई बात नहीं, नो प्रॉब्लम। मुझे भी अभी याद आया।
I'll do that.
Okay, thank you प्रभु जी।
Thank you माता। हरे कृष्ण। जय श्री
प्रभुपाद।
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji.